This is Edgemate Stone Tools with the SinkBot Rebel. The SinkBot Rebel is a portable CNC to cut your sinkholes in granite, quartz, and marble. The reason why it's portable is because we have this cart that actually brings the CNC to your workbench where the stone to be processed will be. This cart has lifting arms here and over there underneath the bridge that with this crank handle can be lowered or raised. So the way this works is you'll have your workbench. This is our test bench where we test granite, abrasives, and also we wet test every machine before it goes out to make sure that it does what it's supposed to. Before you place your stone on your workbench, we recommend you put two 2x4s underneath the sink opening. On top of the 2x4s that support the stone, we recommend they use styrofoam. The reason for this is we don't want the incremental bit cutter going into the 2x4. So with the stone on top of the styrofoam on the 2x4s on the workbench, you want to mark the stone where the center, left to right, the center of the sink opening. You also want to mark how large you want the front rail to be. So this is the distance of the front rail, and so this is the distance going back, is the beginning of the sink opening going back. With that done, you now can bring the CNC over to the stone. Grab these two handles on the front of the cart, and that will bring the machine over, and it's very easy to roll. And all you're aiming for is roughly to get the center of the base plate. So the center of this opening here, this is a slot that holds the front end of the base plate up. You want to get that roughly close to your crosshair mark or the center of your sink opening. So we roll this in, and there we go, we're in. We'll push the machine up tight against the stone. Now right here on the front edge of the stone, we have some guide pins. That actually is the fences to make sure that the CNC itself is perfectly parallel to the front edge of the stone. With the guide pins up against the stone, we can start cranking the handle down, and that will, I'll show you the back, that will lower the lift arms and place the CNC on the stone. You keep rotating it until you see this hook, the safety hook, come out of the base plate. When that happens, you back up the cart, and now you pull the cart back, and typically I go to the left, and that's where my workstation is going to be. Alright, so with that done, we'll show you some of the features on the cart. Here on the right side of the cart, this is where we get access to the computer. That is a fanless computer. To turn it on, you push the red button. Down below here, we have the C-clamps. For the front rail, they're just standard C-clamps. And so they will go right here, holding down this front clamping rail on the CNC. So they go back, and this is where they're stored. And then we have clamps for the back. This locks in the back of the base plate. They get held up on slots like this. That bar goes into a slot, and then this thing pivots. And so it doesn't matter how the distance front to back the stone is. So those get stored there. Here on top of the cart, we have an EStop button. This will stop the machine if you're in an emergency. Recommend that you don't use it, but sometimes you need to. We have a wireless keyboard and a wireless mouse. The wireless mouse is actually on a, I don't know if you can see it, a mouse pad that was textured into the top of the workpiece so that the optical mouse can see what you're up to. The keyboard is wireless because this allows us to carry the keyboard, and I'll show this later, over to the CNC, and now I can operate here by using the arrow buttons to bring, let's say, this bit up here to the crosshairs of the sink opening. So we'll put this back. Also on top of the cart, we have an ammeter. This is a must-have. This will tell you how much amperage or how much power the spindle is using. The reason why this is so important is because that incremental bit will sound differently when it's on top of the stone and when it's in the kerf or in the, let's say in the center of the stone. When there's water in that kerf, that bit is much quieter, and so you're more apt, if you don't hear it making bad noise, you're more apt to push the bit harder than it should be. And the idea of this tool, this machine, is to be able to set it and walk away. It's not a fast machine cutting sinks, but the idea is that it will cut an accurate sink, and you don't have to make templates and you don't have to tend to it. After you place it, it will process the sink and you can come back and the sink will be done. So with this ammeter, this allows you to know how much load's on the spindle so that you can walk away with confidence knowing that it won't get overloaded or also underloaded, meaning if the bit's not cutting, you're cutting fast enough or as fast as it could, you're just creating a longer process time. And so that's also a big minus. So, and when you know the amp reading of the stone, and we'll get into this later, we can control the feed rate, and that's what I mean. You can push the feed rate in increments of 10% to get the bit to cut the stone the most efficiently. Further on, the top of the cabinet is we have a touchscreen monitor. We still have a mouse and a cursor like that, which I recommend you'll use probably 95% of the time. The reason why we went with the touchscreen monitor, because this allows you, if you're in a panic or if you need to do something and your hands are clean, you can go ahead and touch off and get buttons without going looking for the mouse cursor. So that is, I think, a must feature. And the reason why is, your panic is you're going to be hearing the machine, and you might see the amperage going to 13, and you need to turn it down, and instead of hunting for where the arrow button is, you can come over here with your finger and tap down and lower it down, and you can see, it's in increments of 10%, and then it goes up to 250%. So it's a nice feature to have. Further on the left side of the control cabinet, we have 2 manual water feeds. The front one is the center water feed. That brings water through the spindle. This back one is the halo. That brings water around the external part of it. So I'll raise the bit real quick. And so you can see we have center water feed and external water feed. Now these manual valves were placed here because I found myself that if I had the machine off, I wanted to clean off the surface or something, and it was just nice to have water available. If I want to do a touch off and there's all kinds of stone slurry on top of the stone, this allows me to shoot a little water down to clean an area off so I can touch the bit off the top of the stone. Now this water is also controlled by the computer. It goes by Coolant. And so if I turn on the Coolant button, I get both external and internal water feed. And same with the spindle. And so what happens when the program starts, these red buttons will go to green. And that will turn them on and turn them off. The bigger advantage is when the sink is done being processed in the program, it will shut them off. So it will automatically shut off the water and shut off the spindle. So if you're over on the other side of the shop doing something else, this machine will stop and it will shut itself off. Just the spindle and the water. Other features as we get further to the left side of this cabinet. So that is the on-off switch. We have a plastic door here to prevent water spray from getting into the control box. Down here is where we do our water and electric hookup. So we'll go left to right. Here's the 120 volt power cord to the computer control. We have another one here for the spindle. Right now we have the spindle hooked up to the computer control. We found that this is adequate enough, but I do have customers who want to run a second cord just for the spindle. We also have the 2 water feeds. Here we're running them both as clean water, but we have clean water for here for the spindle, and we have recycled water, or it could be recycled water, for the halo. So that is how that is. And back to the spindle. If you do use this outlet or this plug, you still have computer control of the spindle. So don't let that be misunderstood. So by putting it on here, you can get your full electricity. If some people might want to wire this to 2 circuits, or at least run 2 cords, you can, that way you'll get more electricity to the spindle. What have we found with this SinkBot Rebel? It hasn't been necessary. I've yet to pull 15 amps and create a stop. So, but that is on the left side of the cabinet. Well, one feature on this machine is we put automatic lubrication on all the wheels. And what I mean by that is, I'll come over here, and when the center water feed's on, we actually taken some of that water and running it through orifices onto the wheels. As you can see, that brass tube is dropping water on the wheel, and it runs down and it gets on the wheel below it. We have that for the x-axis, front and back, and you can see the water dripping. And then we also have it for the y-axis. Here, you can see the little straw hanging out of the bottom of that plastic block. This feature will definitely create longevity to the machine, because now if stone slurry were to splash up on the rails, they get rinsed off. If stone dust in the shop when the machine's not being operated land on the machine, as soon as you turn the water on, there will be a rinsing action on all the wheels of the machine. So we have these orifices on, we have 4 on the x-axis for each corner of the x-axis. We have 4 on the bridge, and then we also have 4 up in the z-axis. So it's a nice feature to have. If we do find the machine wears down, we also have the ability with this bolt down here to put more tension on the wheels. So we designed it, if the machine were to get loose or baggy, you can tighten the machine back up very easily. The back of the machine, we have a Makita grinder on the back end of it, and plenty of power. There's 2 versions of Makita that fit on this machine. There's a 6,000 RPM version and an 8,500 or 8,400 RPM version. This one has the 8,400 RPM version. The 8,400 is about $50 more than the 6,000 RPM version. Both fit easily in the machine, and both are, locally available. Especially the 6,000, you can pick them up at Home Depot, and they're like 160 bucks. Other feature, the reason why we like the grinder, is we're way over here on the right side now, is right here are where the brushes are. So when this machine gets, after 300-400 sinks, you'll probably want to replace the brushes. That's what we're guessing, because typically brushes go about 250 hours. And so I'm thinking that typical sinks are going to be in that 30 to 40 minute range. I mean, small vanities are going to be 18 minutes to process in 3cm. And your bigger 60-40 sinks are going to be in that 35 to 40 minutes, depending upon the stone and bits. And another feature on the machine is a splash shield. This splash shield is a dedent type deal, so they snap into place. They're also magnetic, so that they stay closed. The thought process here is I want to contain the stone slurry as much as possible to protect the machine from itself, and that's why we have a real tight enclosure. The splash shield is also adjustable for height. Alright, next thing I'd like to show you is how to bring the machine to a location. So after the machine comes off the cart, it'll actually read here on the monitor, enable. So if we push it, it will say disable. Now the machine is active. If I use these arrow buttons here, that moves the machine. If I hold the shift button down and hit the arrow button, it moves it faster. And so if we're going to bring this bit up close to our markings, I can bring the keyboard to me, so I'm standing right next to it. I can lower the bit by going page down. And that's close to the stone. I do that so I can bring the bit closer so I can see it relative to the marks here. I'll use the arrow button to bring it closer. I'll use the left button to bring it to the left, or the left arrow. And I can bring this closer. And now I'm just tapping the arrow button. Now one feature this thing has is it also has an incremental step. So if I hold the control button down and step over, as you can see, I'm moving that bit over. And that's in 10,000 increments. So that's perfect. And now I'll bring the bit to the center this way. And that's the beauty of the splash shield, is I can get way over to the side. And I don't know if we're going to see this with the camera light, but hopefully. And I need to go back, so I'll hold the control button and the back arrow, and I'll back it up a little bit. And there we go. So now that is X0. This is Y0 actually, front to back. And that is X0. Now with that accomplished, I can come back over here. And now on the control, with the cursor, I can come up here and I'll hit X0. And that will make the DRO 0. DRO means digital readout. And I'll make Y0. So now we just told the control where we want the location of the sink. X and Y0. So now with that done, I will hold the shift button and go page up. I'll back the machine over a little bit. Get it here. And with this over here hanging on the base plate hanger, we have a Z touch off. This will actually measure the height of the bit, or the length of the bit. So with the Z touch off like that, I'll raise it a little higher so I have time to come over here. I'll go over to the monitor, and right here where it says Auto Z touch plate, I'll click on that. And if I click on the center button, it will measure the length of the bit. So I'll click on that, and then I'll walk over there and I'll hold the hockey puck, I call it, but the measuring device tight to the stone. So here we go. All right, and so what that did is the control just measured. I hang this back up. The control just measured the length of the bit. And so if we close this window off, what we have is the bit now is an inch, and an eighth would be 125. So it's a little more than an inch and an eighth above the stone. So now the Z is done. So Z has been zeroed. If I wanted to test the Z, I could come over here and check it. I could just lower it by holding the page down button and just watch the DRO. And when I get close, I can hold the control button down, page down, and if I come over here, the bit is touching the top of the stone. So that is what we want. So page up, and rapid page up is with the shift button. So that's how you set up the machine. So that's how we find X0, Y0, Z0. And now with that, and we'll do a quick video also on how to program. But the next step then would be to go get the program that is made in Kanban. So I'd go here, load G code. It's going to give you a browse sheet And we say keep it on the C drive on the folder called One Sync Files. And then put the manufacturer's name in. And then after the manufacturer's name, put the model number in. And then with the model number in, you'd go ahead and here it would show you the file that Mach 4 can read. And it has to be an NC file. Or at least that's what CAN-BAM makes. It'll have an extension of an NC file. This is how you run the SinkBot Rebel. If you have any questions, please give us a call. We love to hear from you. We like to hear some feedback, comments. This is Edgemate Stone Tools with the SinkBot Rebel. Thanks for watching.